Welcome everyone to another episode of Runners Roundtable. Season 3 is all about the how-tos, and I am so thrilled and so excited to have Amanda Katz back on the episode. She was here, or back on the podcast. She was here in season 2 as one of the coaches that I spoke to, and now she's back, and we're going to talk about social media, how to do it, how to be on it, how to engage in it, how to disengage in it. And I am so excited because I know this conversation is just going to be fantastic and go down. When I've been thinking about this discussion with you, the word that comes to mind is juicy. And I'm like, it's just going to be juicy. Wherever it goes, it's going to be good. So before I start asking you questions or we start getting into it, tell us a little bit more about yourself for those who didn't hear your voice and hear the podcast in season 2. Tell us about yourself, what's going on, and where are you on social media?
Sure. Oh my God. I'm just so happy to be back and looking at you, Stephanie. So thank you for having me back. My name's Amanda, and I am a full-time fitness professional. I'm a personal trainer, a run coach, and a group fitness instructor at Equinox here in New York City. And the majority of my day is training clients one-on-one, whether it's from the comfort of their homes. All my personal training clients are virtual, or it's the work that I do with my individual runners, checking in with them and teaching group fitness classes in treadmill running, strength conditioning, as well as indoor cycling. So that's how I spend my days at work. I am on social media. I use the space to put some real talk into the fitness world. And I am very transparent on that space about my challenges with body image, my past with eating disorders, how prevalent it still very much is in the fitness industry, how toxic fitness culture is just something that we all have to work on actively removing from the industry and removing from our own social media pages, right? And reminding ourselves that we have a choice in the accounts that we engage in and with. So that's kind of my shtick when it comes to being present in that space.
I appreciate that because social media can be so interesting. And this is why I say I appreciate it, right? Because I came on to Instagram very soon after I started running. So I would say I'm going to focus on Instagram because I'm just old when it comes to social media, and I can only handle one platform at a time. Yeah.
Old millennials, here we go.
Old millennial. I'm like, I can only really handle one platform at a time. I can't do it all. So Instagram is my main thing. And Instagram is something that I started posting on over a decade ago, right? So Instagram, when it was kind of this new thing, I went on there. So I actually have now I have a few, but I have 2 personal Instagram accounts, or semi-personal. One of them was just me sharing pictures of my kids. And then I stopped because I didn't like having pictures of my kids. I don't know. It's weird. It's always a weird dynamic there. And then I started the Cookie Runner one, which again, I call that my semi-personal one because that's really, there's nothing else. Like it's that or whatever other business accounts that I have. And when I first started, it was very much so just a log. I mean, there was pictures of the food I was eating. There was pictures of, the things I was doing. There were, at the time, I was documenting my journey through T25, the Shaun T Beachbody program.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to try T25. I even have, if anybody wants to go back, you'll see like the before and after pictures that were really, they're still popular, but that I feel were exceptionally popular over a decade ago. So I was on that platform showing lots of bits and pieces of my life. And over the years, it's kind of ebbed and flowed. So in those years where yoga was a little more prominent in my life, there was a lot more yoga on there. Now there's a lot more running. But even for myself, I've seen it go from I'm just sharing whatever I'm doing to now I have those moments of, should I share this? Should I not share this? I am maybe like you, just a little bit unique in terms of I question what I share because I know that someone might see it and they might be influenced by it. So there are often times where I go silent on posting. Maybe I'll post a story here or there, but I go silent because I'm like, I don't really know what to post. I don't know how to post it. I don't know if my words and pictures and any of that even matter to anybody. So basically what I'm saying is I get in my own way here when it comes to social media and sharing. So how did you figure out who you are on social media? Because now again, I'm in this phase of big change because we're moving and I'm kind of reevaluating where I want to put my efforts into, particularly with this move. It's a temporary move, but it's still, I'm going to be 100% remote and digital in what I'm doing. So I'm in this phase of, okay, so what do I want to focus on? How do I want to use this platform? And just how do I want to show up? So there's a lot that I'm sharing there, but I'm just curious as to how has your evolution with social media been? Because, and I'll say this, and this is part of why I'm asking, because I remember when I first started following you, there was a certain type of content, and now I look forward to your memes like they're the best part of the day, right? Like, I'm like, okay, she's created more memes. They're so good. But I'm like, wait, she wasn't making memes before, or were you? And I just didn't catch it.
No. So let's address being authentic, right? And showing up on the platform with authenticity. What I love about your content, Stephanie, is that it's professional in that you're a run coach and you are posting content that inspires not only your runners, but the runners you follow and other fitness enthusiasts, right? So that's one part of it. But the other part of it that I love is how you personalize it with your running journey. And I got to see you along your London Marathon build and some of the really honest, raw conversations you were having around, I don't know where I'm at with running. And today I ran really easy and I looked at my pace and this was slow and I'm okay with it. And just normalizing that very real conversation that we have as humans on the run. So I giving ourselves grace and just knowing that, yeah, let's post something if it, like, I don't need to force it. And if I feel compelled to share my thoughts on something, that I will. And just giving yourself grace. For me, social media, I initially used, like you, I've had the same account for over 10 years. And it started as a personal blog, photo blog, going out with my girlfriends, meals, etc., traveling. As I got into, I think it was the pandemic, really, that I shifted the conversation on my platform to have less personal and more fitness related content. And then I looked at the majority of my followers and they became more fitness focused followers. They were there to either during the pandemic take Instagram live classes with me or get tips on running and what have you, much like you, much like the content that you put out. So I shifted my content and then I needed to figure out a way to thread who I was with my profession, which just came with confidence. And one thing about me is I don't like taking fitness so seriously, and these really curated, photoshopped images that are pushed into our algorithms, I can't hang with them. So I have to make light of them. The other area that maybe is challenging for people to add a little humor into is what I was saying earlier, how active our industry is, how actively our industry engages in disordered eating and exercise, and has actually normalized it. So as a part of my content, I very much try to push statements out that maybe shock people initially, but when they think about it, they realize that it is very apparent in the industry, so much so that it doesn't appear to be a problem. And it's kind of just been woven into the fabric of what fitness is. You know, doing more is better approach to everything, and cheat meals and fitness challenges and run streaking and surviving on as little fuel as possible, and this mentality that if it's not painful, you're not getting something from it, and kind of putting that out there in my content with a touch of humor so that we can hopefully get to a place where we're talking about how we really could do better for ourselves.
Humor disarms, right? Like humor is that thing that people, whatever defenses they have up, maybe they're still up, but they come down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I love that because I see it with both, right? With yoga, and then I've seen it with running. And now I'll be totally honest. So if anyone follows me and they're like, oh, wait, she's not posting as much yoga content as she used to, there's a real big intentional reason behind that. And for me, similar with the pandemic, it was a moment to pause and figure out, wait, who am I within the yoga space? How am I honoring the tradition of yoga, the voices, like what voices aren't we hearing? And then what voices should we be hearing as opposed to mine? Now, I know I still have a valuable voice and all of that. I am a Latin woman teaching yoga, but I'm doing that in Miami where there's, I don't want to say dime a dozen, but I'm a majority where I live. But on Instagram, it was really, the pandemic really changed my relationship to the practice of yoga, and it strengthened my relationship with running. So running is one of those things where, again, if you go to my feed, you'll see it's going to be mostly running content, because that one, I don't want to say that it feels safer, that identity feels safer, but I just feel like I can be a better advocate within the running community than with yoga. It's like a story for another podcast and another day in terms of where I am with yoga and how I present myself as a practitioner, as a teacher, instructor on Instagram. But that is something that I've been really aware of. And I think to what you're saying too, and I'm just like, as I reflect on myself, there was a period of time where I would share a lot of running tips because I was like, oh, I need the structure. Listen, I even did, and it was a wonderful internship, but it was during, or a mentorship, it was during the pandemic as well. And it was all about social media. And I had the color palette to make it look beautiful aesthetically, and what the colors make you feel. Like I did all of that. What are my values? All of that, all of this marketing stuff that is really, really beautiful. And for those that can do that because they enjoy doing it, keep on doing it. Mm-hmm. For me, it added another layer of like planning to it that took away from the authenticity. So you'll see, for me, I have shied away from sharing the running tips or being more, I don't want to say professional in that regard, but coming to learn that for myself, the way I teach best is through sharing my personal experience, is through saying, this is what I'm going through, but also making sure that I'm telling, this is what I'm going through. I'm not saying this is what you need to do, but this is what I'm going through, because I feel that we get a lot of the same information recycled on Instagram, but like repurposed with different colors and like different fonts. And I'm just like, but wait, okay, I read this, and that's an issue I have with Instagram, where it's so much generalized information that we're just missing. I feel like we're missing a lot from
missing the human part of it. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
you're bringing into your content. I can relate to what you're saying in that my background, I love writing. I love writing. So memes and kind of that text on a post is an opportunity for me to do something I love, putting my thoughts in a post versus in the beginning, especially when tools like Reels came out and TikTok was another, popularized it as well. This heavy video content. It's easy to feel a lot of pressure because you want to quote unquote get into the algorithm so that you grow your network, right? And I found that I think it was at the end, like towards the end of last year, I decided I was not going to do that anymore. It's like if I make a reel, it'll feel like a good time to make it, but I'd rather do what I actually enjoy doing, which is either posting photos, posting words that I've written, or memes. Like, that's what I enjoy. So why am I going to do something I don't enjoy doing? Now, social media doesn't pay my bills. However, if it did, maybe this would be a different conversation. I will say that I have never advertised myself to have one-on-one clients. It's either been word of mouth or one of my clients found me through a hashtag, ironically. I know.
I love it.
So social media is a great tool, which is why we want to use it for our business. In the same breath, I have to recognize that I'm not getting paid to be a running influencer in the way that some folks on the internet are, which also it leads me to my next thought about that. Something provoked actually by you is these classes of running influencers, right? So I don't know if there's anyone who would say that I was an influencer. I have 2 followers, but there's a class the 2 people who follow me, the class of influencers that I would put myself under would be those who are, they're more qualified to speak because we are credentialed. We want to make sure that our following has longevity in the sport. And then there are those who cannot speak to the science of running and who are pushing out more information that is more miles, more medals. Let me post my Strava stats. And this comparison game begins to, like, whether or not you signed up to play it, now you're in.
Yeah. And I think so, like what you had said about me being in a weird place with running, and that's something I've talked about. I mean, I feel like I talk about it all the time. And part of the reason I am in a weird place with running is honestly, it's social media, right? When you go on, it's like when you go on to Instagram in April, and if you follow runners, you're going to think everybody's running a marathon and everyone's a Boston qualifying runner. And it's like, no, that's actually not the case. Like, it's like such a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of that. But for myself, there was, again, when I started running and social media was a baby, so baby runner stuff and baby Instagram got together and everything was fun. I feel like that was a time when everyone was just sharing. You had no clue what was happening. People were just sharing whatever they're sharing. It's not it wasn't curated pictures like it is now, or very specific content. And like, hey, I'm someone, I love my pictures. I'm probably a mix of pictures that are random, like the one that I posted today, which was of me with some boxes behind me, like right after my run. I'm like, this is as real as it's going to get. Then I like reels too, because that to me, it's like the creativity of stitching things together to tell a story, telling a story in a very different way. And then I love my professional photographs. And those are the photos that like I am feeling myself and I want to share with everybody else, right? Like that's it for me. But when I first started on social media, it was totally that if I didn't take a picture, it didn't happen type of mentality. So it was a lot of like, okay, right in the moment, take a picture, post it, and let it go. Whereas over the years, it became, again, like a little more intentional as I started approaching Instagram as this space to either grow my businesses or have people know what I'm doing on a professional basis. And now I'm in this space, much like with running, of like, okay, so how do I want to be here? And that leads me to not really posting as often, or when I do post, like, screw the algorithm that says you should post 3 times a day at very specific times. I'm like, no, I'm going to post when I want to post. Like now it's like, again, the picture I posted today was like 5 hours after I took it, but I was like, wait, I want to share this because this is my life. This is the reality right now. But it is, I guess I share all this because it is so hard to know how to engage on it when you are, and for me, and I say you as the universal of that, of like when you are trying to bring your authenticity, but then you're also using it as a business platform. And also just when the landscape has changed, because that was one of the questions. I'm like, let's talk about the rise of the running influencer, because now, and listen, I'm very guilty about following certain accounts where they're just very popular accounts, big accounts, but they have no credentials. And then they're out here giving people advice on how to run or how to get faster and all that stuff. And part of it is I read it because I'm curious what they have to say. And then part of it is also just like a fascination. I mean, it's kind of social media at times really does feel like reality TV to me, of like, I'm watching it and I'm in awe, but then I'm disgusted by it, but then I can't stop looking. And I find that and I can think of like very specific accounts right now, and I won't say their names at all, because if you follow them, keep following them if it's motivating you. But I can think of very specific accounts where it's like, they're not, for instance, nutritionists and they're giving out nutrition advice, or they're not physical therapists and they're giving out injury prevention advice. But because they're fast, and I think that's an issue I take with social media, is that for some reason, people equate being fast and looking athletic with being an expert in whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, there was that study that I was just pulling it up, that Danielle Friedman, she's just cited in the New York Times. And I'm not sure the percentage of running influencers that were included in this fitness influencer study, but it basically, out of 100, I want to say 100 fitness influencers, the top 100 fitness influencers on social media, it was a scary amount of influencers who were, and I'm going to pull up the exact amount. Yep. They found that 2/3 of the 100 top most popular fitfluencers, as they call them, they lacked, and I quote, sound advice, or posted messages that could negatively affect people's mental and physical health by, say, promoting exercise as a tool to become skinnier. And on top of that, that doesn't even, and the study goes on to talk about how they are also sharing imagery that is heavily photoshopped. as well as promoting disordered eating, right? So to your point, I'll see folks who are running influencers who are posting their half marathon or marathon flats. I see no gels, 2 gels, 4 gels. I'm like, are you Elliot? How fast are you going? It's scary. And then the I take issue with it because if you are someone who's passionate about running, you should post about that. The people who follow you, if they feel good when they see your content, that is an awesome thing. But it's really hard for me to see accounts posting and promoting behaviors that are unhealthy to the sport, right? I think run streaking is another thing that I personally do not subscribe to as a coach and a trainer. That can lead down a bad path in terms of injury and disordered behavior around exercise. Also, this promotion of low sugar or no sugar fueling options in endurance sport. That's another thing. I see a lot of running influencers who will post that they're running through injuries that they really should not be running through without any physical therapy assessment. And this information spreads like wildfire. Well, this influencer I follow is running on a stress fracture. So that means that I got this diagnosis, and I guess it's okay if I do too. So it just echoes. Calling running therapy, using it. These are just mantras and words to some people, but to others, they really take it seriously. So I think that we have as running professionals, we have to support our followers by sharing with them how to best process information on social media, what accounts are healthy to engage in, and what accounts maybe take away from our love for the sport.
Yeah, that's something that when I think about social media, it is very much so having to ask that question of what am I getting out of this account? Is this an account that leaves me feeling better than when I arrived, or is it leaving me feeling worse than when I arrived? Now, again, I want to say I'm totally guilty of following accounts that feel like a car accident, and I just can't stop watching. Like, I'm totally guilty of that. I want people to know that I'm totally guilty of that. I'm not saying to go through your Instagram and then purge it on and you'll be like a saint on the platform, because that's not me either. But it is interesting to see what you just said. I mean, the one that drives me personally, it drives me crazy, are the intermittent fasting and runners. That one drives me crazy. And I'm even thinking one of my daughters had a dentist appointment this morning. And while I was inside with the one that had the appointment, my other daughter was outside in the waiting area. So when we finally reunited, she was like, "Mommy, if you would have heard that person talking about their diet, you wouldn't be able to be that person." She's like, "She doesn't eat cheese. She doesn't eat bread. She doesn't eat sugar." And I'm like, I just don't understand. I don't understand how, and I want to say that, I am someone, and again, I will speak totally honestly of this, where there was a period of time where I tried fasted running too, because I saw that some of the people that were running that I respected, that's what they were doing. And I'm like, well, they're getting faster and it seems like it's working for them. Let me try it. You know what happened to me? I had such extreme brain fog from not being properly fueled that I couldn't get through my runs, or I made it through my runs, but I felt like garbage when I finished. And that was one of many instances where I look back and I wish I had more of that that discernment of, okay, here's this information that I'm seeing on social media. Here's what this person is doing. But where are they saying, this is what works for me? Do what works for you. Because I feel like, again, a lot of what we see on social media, or a lot of what I see, a lot of what is out there, are these generalizations based on a study of one, based on whatever that person is doing. And it just takes away. It takes away, I mean, for me with that, like trying the fasted eating, and it was actually 2 people that I saw that were doing that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're getting faster, they're getting stronger. And it's like, wait a minute, I am a solid 10 years older than some of these people, or totally different lifestyle than some people. I can't do that. And I guess I just share that so that everyone knows that you're listening. If you're listening to this, like, I totally fall prey to social media and to the comparisons and to the keeping up with the fitfluential people. I don't even know, that's an awful word, but keeping up with like these influencers online, particularly in moments where I'm feeling insecure about where I am with running. And again, I've talked about that a lot, of being someone who at this point in life, I'm trying to run more to feel a certain way versus to get a certain time. And that, again, it feels really hard to have that mentality when so much of what's online or so much of what's focused on or shared are either the PRs that people got or the PR misses that people had. Mm-hmm. So how do we, because I know you said it's like we share the information to get the people who follow us to open their eyes or see variety. I mean, how do we even have that discussion with people? Or how do we encourage people to not consume so blindly?
Yeah. Well, I think something you brought up, although we cannot speak, you and I are not sports dietitians, we can share information from sports dietitians whose values align with our own. And every sports dietitian whose proof is in the pudding, their clients are healing from stress fractures and bone injuries, and they're hitting PRs. Women are, specifically women, are best in a fed state, right? So fasted cardio sounds cute until somebody breaks a bone. And we require, even just for our brains to function, at least 130 grams of carbs. So these are pieces of information that you're not going to get from necessarily your favorite running influencer or fitness influencer who is taking a photo of their treadmill mile saying fasted cardio today. You're not going to get that information. It's not that sexy. You know, what we're sharing is real. This is the reality. And you put it quite well. It's a study of one. It's one person who is really not doing, and maybe they're doing it unintentionally, but they're not giving their following anything that is useful or helpful. So I think that there's nothing wrong with following runners who inspire you, but we want to go through some gut checks, right? So does this account make you feel all right in your body? I think that's first. Does where you're at in your fitness journey, do you feel less than when you're exploring their experience? Why continue to follow them? At that point right there, that's an unfollow. Are they promoting only one kind of running body? Just like you would hire any other professional, right? You got to weed through some of the riffraff. We don't necessarily hire the first therapist we speak with, the first run coach we speak with, the first personal trainer we engage with. we go through a bunch of frogs to find our Prince Charming. So, and we also have to take into account that superior genetics, having no kids, being 25 years old, having 24/7 access to a fitness studio, having really restrictive diets. These are not credentials and these are not qualifications. So when we're looking at an account, we have to have both eyes open to what their lifestyle is like, with so that we don't compare ourselves to that. And I think that just takes time. Like you said, we're not going to, I think you and I are not expecting anyone to go through their followers and do a mass unfollowing. But I will say it is incredibly therapeutic. I have done it myself.
Well, I think,
yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
And one of the things that you were coming clean about some of the things that you did early in your following of running influencers. One thing I would always see were folks posting their Strava stats and their watch stats and their mileage and their paces. And I decided a couple of years ago, I just turned all of that off on Strava. I turned it off. I don't want somebody else comparing their journey to mine. And the only time that I will do it is to prove to folks that running easy is beneficial. And so I think I shared several months ago that on my easy days, the majority of my days, I spend at around a 10 to 30 minute mile. And yet my speed days are sub 8 minutes, right? Just to show that this is normal and not every run should be at these hard efforts and should be breaking down our bodies. I think that was the last time I posted a pace. Otherwise, it's so unhelpful.
Yeah, see, I find it like it's so interesting because that's the one that I struggle with so much in terms of sharing paces on the gram. And I go back and forth. There are some days when I share it, and then there are some days when I don't. And the days that I do, it's very much because I'm like, no, I want people to see that I went out there and like it was maybe an 11:30 to a 12-minute mile. I want people to see that so they can see like it's okay, because I find, and I don't know if in the people you speak to or the communities you speak to, but for me, my experience is always people get so caught up with a 12-minute mile. Like that's the one where they're like, 12-minute. When I get faster, I'll run with you. And I'm like, wait, but what's your pace now? 12 minutes. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? That's a great pace. Like, I think that's such a lovely pace. So yeah. So like I go through phases of wanting to share it so that people can see like, oh, look, here I am. I'm training for a marathon, or I'm running, or I'm doing this. I've been doing it at this point for a very long time. And this is the pace. So I find that pace discussion to be such a tricky one, depending, I feel like maybe where on the spectrum you land in terms of pace and whether other people perceive your pace as fast versus slow versus average. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to any of this other than you post what you feel comfortable with. But I know I go back and forth with not wanting to post and then posting so people can say like, okay, hey, like this was what it was today. This is what I had today. This is what I could give today. And that's okay. But it is tricky because I feel like I think both you and I want to inspire and motivate people to get out the door and move their bodies. We don't want to inspire and motivate them to compare, right? Like and I think that's where it gets really, really, all this entire conversation is hard. But I feel like that's where it gets really tricky in terms of us being the ones that share, because ultimately it comes back to why do we share what we share, right? Why is it that we're putting out whatever content that we're putting out? And I think I just find it, I mean, if you all are listening to this and you're like, Steph, get to the point. I don't know what the point is because I'm so conflicted myself with all of this. But I do want to go back to something you said about feeling less than in the experience, like after the experience of interacting with an account, because I feel like that is so practical and such a, like, if you want to start building awareness with what you're engaging with on social media, I feel like that's the first one, because our bodies are going to tell us immediately, like, I'm happy. And then I go on social media and I'm not happy. Like, you're going to feel it as long as you're bringing that awareness to it. But which brings me to this. Why do you think we feel bad when we unfollow accounts?
That's a good question. I have to tell you though, the more you do it, I don't feel any guilt now. Especially these big, I think humans naturally have this feeling of FOMO. And if an account adds to your social media life, keep following it, right? Who are we to say what makes you feel good and what doesn't make you feel good? But if that gut check is saying red flag, what would happen if you just unfollowed? What would happen? You would create space in your life to remember why you run. Not everyone wants to run races, right? So if you're following people who are only posting about, all right, just did this marathon, and in 2 weeks, I'm doing another marathon. And in 3 weeks, I have a 10K. And then in 2 weeks, I'm going on an ultra. That's, for me personally, that is unhelpful content.
I love that, because
I don't follow anyone who does that.
Well, that's such a great tip here, right? Of like, okay, y'all, this is homework. This is homework for everyone that's listening to this. But it is that of really getting clear or curious as to what type of runner am I? Am I someone who is, like you said, they don't really do races? So then following accounts that do races doesn't really make sense. I mean, again, unless you want to do that and you enjoy seeing the person do all those races and there's nuggets there that you get that maybe you wouldn't get from someone else, that's fine. But it is true, because all of a sudden it's going to, and I think that's the question I had for you, is how do we not let social media take away from our experience as a runner? And it seems like part of the answer to that is to make sure that you are following people that do align with who you are as a runner, perhaps your goals as a runner, and what you want to get out of the sport.
Yeah, I hope that everyone who's listening to this runs because they want to run, and runs because it gives them a sense of fulfillment, and they find that they are more appreciative for their time by themselves, maybe in their group, in their community, because they run. And so if there is any account that is harming that experience, wouldn't you want to unfollow that account? So I think that the best way is to do a bit of a quote unquote social media detox. If you're finding yourself comparing yourself to the accounts that you see, I would, if specifically on Instagram, I think that explore tab, when it comes to following a ton of runners, becomes heavy in comparison. You are seeing every day, come with me on my 8-mile run. Do I have to? I don't know that I have to. I don't know that I want to. Actually, you know what? Do I care? Or am I just, like Stephanie said, watching a car crash every day, and the car crash being my ego, right?
Yes.
So I would just take that out of the equation. If I know that I can't control myself around that sort of content, if I know that about myself, if you're listening to this and that's you, remove yourself from it. You want to be in spaces that are speaking to how much stronger, how much more confident, how much community we can achieve through running, right? We want to engage with content that's going to educate us and inform us, fill in the gaps around what if you don't have a run coach, if we don't work with a sports dietitian. These things are not financially accessible to everyone. We want to make sure the accounts that we follow are educating us and not leading us down to a path where we one day can't run.
To piggyback off of that, I just had this thought of it's also following the accounts that will encourage you to celebrate where you are right now. Because I find that some accounts, and again, it is what it is, but we don't have to engage in it. But it's kind of it's that idea of like, it always has to be a PR, or you always have to be improving. And I find that the accounts that I enjoy the most are the ones that talk about the lows of running, or where they are struggling with running, because I have to remind myself, and I remind people, and we hear it all the time, right? Like your Instagram feed, it's a curated experience, right? You're going to get, for a lot of people, you're going to get the highlights. I know for myself, I want both. I want the highlights and I want the lowlights, right? I want to see the good moments and the bad moments, because then I feel like my own experience of highs, lows, plateaus is validated. So I think that's a part of it too, of engaging with accounts that do validate your experience. And again, going back to what you said, don't make you feel like you're less than, or like you're falling behind, or like you should be doing something different. And I think a lot of that really does, a step there is in these accounts that you follow is to ask yourself, okay, how similar is this person's lifestyle to mine? And I think in the beginning, when I was on social media, I would, and I've told this story before, but I always love recounting this story, because when I first started running, I ran because I just thought it was so much fun. I was that person that did all the races. I was that person that did a run streak, because everyone was doing run streaks. Like I felt like there was a period of time where everyone was doing a run streak, and I was like, oh, I want to do it. I want to see if I can do it. Thankfully, I was okay. I did, in 1 year, I did a run streak, and I ran the number of miles per year. This was 2016. It was, looking back, it was the stupidest thing I could have ever done, because it was just so much. No surprise there that the following year, now looking back, I can see how it all comes together. But the following year, I had a really bad marathon experience, and I burnt out of running, because I did so much more than what my body needed, more than what I needed, because it was like, oh, there's this online community and that's what they're doing, and we're all connecting and we're posting daily, and the algorithm, and everyone's liking my posts, right? Like let me tell you, I love when Instagram, like it's the features of being able to hide the like posts. I like doing that because I don't want to see, because again, I want to post to share, whoever gets to, it gets to. But in those early years, those metrics, I mean, dopamine hit from that stuff was really great. So I did all of that, and it did not lead me. It did not lead me to a good mental place. Thankfully, I did not get injured in all of that. But I know that in that time, I was following, in Spanish, right? In Spanish, siguiéndole la corriente, right? Like I was following the current of everybody, because I saw everyone was doing a run streak. Everyone was running the miles of the year. Everyone was running a BQ. I even had it. I wish I still had it, but I packed it away, because I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm going to take a picture and share this. And I have yet. But in that time, I even created a graph for myself for Boston qualifying times. Okay. The year, how old I would be on race day, what is the time that I need to get, the buffer. I love spreadsheets. So y'all don't be surprised if you know me and like in real life, you know, I love spreadsheets. So that is 100% on par with my personality. But I was chasing someone else's goal because I thought that's what everyone else was doing. And I thought that, well, all these people who are quote unquote runners are doing that. And if I want to be a real runner, I've got to do that too. Even though I was already running marathons, I was already putting the time in. Like there was this really messed up idea of what it meant to be a real runner. And this idea that in order to be a real runner, I have to always be progressing. And at that time, I never really saw the people who were not progressing. Again, the accounts I was following, I didn't apply the same mindfulness that I do now as I did then. And I had a conversation, I remember, with my coach, my run coach. And she's like, Steph, why do you want this? Why do you want a Boston qualifying time? And she flat out asked me, is this because you want it or because it seems it's like what everyone else is doing and you think you want it? I started to cry because no one had flat out asked me that. I was going through the motions of doing it, trying to keep up with the people in my phone, trying to keep up with what I thought everyone was doing because that's what you did as a runner. And no one had actually stopped to ask me that question. As soon as she did, I cried and I was like, it's not me. Like, that isn't what I want. The weight came off. We went from, my entire training cycle changed after that, because at that point I was being given workouts for a Boston qualifying time. And I just did not have it in me. And again, now I still struggle with that in terms of like, what can my body do versus what does my mind want to do versus what's fun? And how do I bring those three elements into alignment? Because now I know for me, having fun is the most important thing. This is a lot of time. Running is hard. Running, it sucks. Like, I love running, but it sucks and it's hard and it's hot and it's a whole manner of things. And to your point, we're not getting paid to do this. I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm not getting paid to go do my 5-mile run that I did this morning. And that's why I feel like I have such a weird relationship with social media because of that history of being on this platform, thinking I needed to keep up with the Joneses, thinking I needed to keep up with everyone else to validate who I was as a runner, when in reality, the validation comes from me. Now I know that the validation comes from me and from taking a real hard look at what I've done and that tough love moment from my coach of, is this you or is this someone else? And now I'm here in this space of, I want to share my running journey, but I'm also a running coach, but I also want this space to be inviting for everyone, but I also know that this space isn't for everyone. So how do you think about it at all in that way?
I think that I look at running, when you said, if you're not progressing in the sport you're not getting better. And how do we define progress? For me, progress is not getting faster. I've made that decision for myself. So that's a part of this whole conversation is, are you putting yourself in an environment where they are speaking authentically to their individual goals? My individual definition of progress is not getting faster, losing weight, doing the most with as little food as possible in my body. That's not progress. For me, progress is I get to go out for a run on a beautiful day and enjoy the experience and run easy. Wow, that's progress today. I was able to run for 1 hour easy today, and I didn't feel rushed. I didn't worry about the fact that the mileage was 5.8 and not 6 miles, right?
Okay, yes. Let me tell you, that's been one of the things I have relished.
That's progress.
Letting go is not having to get 0.0. And
your body doesn't know, your body doesn't give a shit. Your body doesn't know the difference. Your body knows that Stephanie went out for a 1 hour easy run and she nailed the effort. That's progress though. In this space, that's progress, because in another on social media, the curated content is hitting these even numbers. It's having these, it's the curation that you were speaking about. Running in reality looks like, you know what? I gotta pull the plug. Like, today is not my day. Running in reality is knowing that even easy runs are not gonna feel effortless. Running in reality is, oh, let me try this new pre-run snack, and then 10 minutes in being like, I need a bathroom. Those are the people there are people on social media now more than ever before who are speaking honestly about these experiences. And we have a choice in following them, right? So it takes a little research, a little time, but your time spent doing that, if it's important to you and social media is a part of your day-to-day life, is engage in that. And another way is to not engage with social media as much, is by putting a timer on your social media. I believe there's on Instagram at least, like you can set up, all right, 1 hour spent, that's it. Even if you don't leave the app, you're mindful now that you spent that amount of time on there. And is it helpful or is it harmful? I think these are just a few of the ways that, we're just comparing running in reality versus running in this hyper curated, beautiful, filtered space, and spending more time in the reality.
Yeah. And I think it's, you had said something earlier, and my thought was, we don't even do this in real life, right? Like in real life, if someone is causing us harm and not feeling good, we avoid them, or we stop talking to them, or we, cut them off, whatever it is. And yet with social media, it feels, and that's why I asked you, I'm like, why does it feel hard to unfollow people? And I mean, for myself, I can tell you, like, the bigger the account, the less guilt I have, because I'm like, they've got thousands of followers, they won't notice me. It's the smaller accounts that I'm like, oh, okay. But then it's also like, but I never really engage with this account anyway. So what they probably won't even notice that I'm not following them anymore, right? And it's also just, even as
someone, if they do, is it our business?
Right. And I was going to say, even for myself, I see my followers go up and down, and I don't go through to see who it was. I don't care. Like, I don't care enough. If you're following me, great. Thank you. Welcome. I love to have you here. But if you're not, I'm also like, there's a lot of other accounts. And if what I'm saying doesn't land with you, by all means, go find someone else that you like. Totally cool. I just find it, again, I find social media to be so interesting, because talk about a platform that's made for us to mindlessly engage in it. And what we're asking people to do is to be mindful with how they are engaging with it, right? Like, be mindful of the accounts that you are following. And like, I love the question of, does it add value to your life? Does it make you feel good? If it's a yes, keep on following. If it's a no, hit the unfollow, continue on. And even more basic than that, just don't engage in it, right? Like, I find that, again, I appreciate social media because it really does help me connect to a lot of people. It helps me know different people. Like, I've connected with you because of social media, and I love following what you're sharing and what you're, the messages. And like I said, I totally look forward to the memes, because I'm like, okay, what did she think about today with this? And I love it because you're making commentary on things that people refuse to talk about. Like, I just flat out refuse to talk about it. And I love that you're being so bold in talking about it. But I also recognize, like, there's other people that are talking about this too. And then how can I find more of those accounts which again, I come back to that. What we're asking people to do, and I'm asking myself to do, right, is put a little more thought into being on social media. Put a little more thought into the accounts. And again, the questions that come up for me are the accounts that I follow. And that's been something really helpful. That was part of my story, but I got so caught off in everything else that I was saying. Of one thing that really helped me in terms of the comparison game was taking time to ask myself, how similar is this person's life to mine? And now I no longer, if I see someone, even if it's another mother, I'm like, nope, I'm not going to compare myself to you because you don't have a 13-year-old. You don't have an 11-year-old. You don't live in Miami. You aren't married to my husband. You don't do this. You don't do that. There's no point in comparing it. For me, I enjoy those accounts because I'm more curious as to how are they managing things? Not so much, am I going to emulate what they're doing? Am I going to copy them? No, it's more like, there's a different perspective that I hadn't thought of. But for me to see an account and say, oh, I want to do what they do, that for me has been one of the biggest gifts of awareness when it comes to social media, when it comes to the runners or the different fitness people or the different accounts. Honestly, at this point, the stuff that I get is mostly dogs, because because it's just that I will think.
Does the dog ever give you a bad gut check? Like, no.
I'm like, I'm grateful for the algorithm with that. At this point, I feel like I'm following more animals than humans. But I guess the question I have is, if we have to like just bring it down real simple to people, and it's two questions I'm going to ask you, and then we'll finish with our final big question. So if you had to give people one tip, I am a new runner or I'm a runner, how should I approach social media?
We, as a new runner, we should keep in mind that not every fitness, wellness, running account is here for our fitness, wellness, and running. Some accounts, a lot of accounts, are pushing out content that is incredibly self-serving, especially those who are uncredentialed and unqualified. And they're looking to build a following versus and a community. I won't say, I don't want to say anything negative about folks on social media who are uncredentialed, who happen to have a passion for running, but just being mindful of, if you are looking to social media as a tool to become a better runner, a stronger runner, it may not every account is the right account for you. I think the better way to use social media is, if an account does inspire you, keep following it. And if you are looking for running guidance and advice, you need to be following professionals. We spoke about earlier how these professionals not every professional will be for you, and they should align with your values and who you are. That takes some time to gain confidence in. I think that great running professionals also share content from other professionals in the field. So I would say that's probably a tip for coaches, to continue to share content and to elevate voices of other physical therapy professionals, mental health professionals, sports dietitian professionals, other running coach professionals, so that community for the individual who is engaging on the platform grows. And then they see, oh, Amanda shared something from the Cookie Runner. I really love how honest she is about her running journey and how I go along in the experience with her. Let me follow her content as well. So that we're building this barrier to the bullshit.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because I think that is such a fabulous tip. And I just want to make it clear for everyone here. If you didn't catch what she said, is follow the people who are not afraid to repost the people who know more. Like, that is so huge. And, you know, and I see it all the time where it's like, there's enough people on this planet. There's enough people on this planet. You will find the people that are for you, the people that are for someone else will find you. It's like, even with yoga in particular, like I always say, I am not the teacher for everyone, just like not every student is a student for me. Totally fine. Totally fine. The same thing goes with your run coach, with your PT, with any of that. So I adore that because I think that is something that in its own way, it's a red flag. Is this person sharing anything from anyone else, or is it always just them? Because I feel like if it's always just that person, I don't know, to me, I'm like, oh, it's the ego. The ego says, let me only share from me and let me share. And I see this all the time. And, you know, it's hard because a lot of the information is well-known information, but it's also like, but where does that information come from? Are you able to share information on your account that comes from someone else and not be worried about? Yes. And give them credit. Like, can you give people credit? It's totally cool. I mean, for me, I find I love sharing other people's information because one, I don't want to put in the time to do the research that some people are already doing. So let me just highlight them because they're doing it. And two, again, there's enough people. If I know that I'm not for everyone, then I can accept that maybe I can at least be a conduit. Maybe I could at least be that little connector where people may come to me or stumble across me, but then they find someone else that is a better fit for them. So I love that. And I think that's such a great thing of like, and I feel like for myself, that type of information comes through more in my stories than it is in a static post. Like my static posts are usually me. So I think even that, like people, if you're following someone on Instagram, pay attention to their stories too. And what information are they sharing in their stories? Because that might give you a little more insight into who they are and where they get their information from. The second question that I had, and you kind of touched upon it, because I find that more and more people are using social media for business. How should run coaches, people who are intending to use the platform to get clients, how should they engage with social media? Because I think both you and I fall into a boat of social media is like this indirect platform for getting clients. Like I'm not on there trying to get clients. I'm on there trying to share my experience and normalize the ups and downs and just how I'm trying to normalize the ups and downs, but then also shed light on the joys of just showing up when it comes to running. So for those that are thinking of like, oh no, I'm going to use social media to build my coaching business, how should they engage with social media? What kind of content do you think they should be posting? What are your thoughts on that?
Couple of things. So the type of content run coaches should be sharing should be within their scope of practice. So we love talking about scope of practice, and it speaks to what you were talking about earlier, right? And this mindset that there are some folks online and in real life who are giving detailed information to their clients, and they are uncredentialed and unqualified. They're giving meal plans. They're prescribing exercises to heal pain, right? Without recommending to their client, hey, maybe you got to get assessed by a physical therapist. Or before I tell you to blindly take these supplements, you should probably check in with your primary care physician and see your vitals. Like, let's check that out. So these are just different examples. Same thing with nutrition, right? That run coaches are able to give overall guidance in these areas, however specific and healing. And I just, for those who are not watching video, I just did air quotes, healing injuries and pain and gut health and all the fakakta nonsense we now see in the algorithm. You save that for the professionals, okay? Not the account sharing a promo code. Save that for the professionals. So one, we stay within our scope of practice, and we are not worried that our client is going to leave us. Our client is going to get exactly what they need from us as run coaches, right? So that's one. Two, I think, would be to be mindful of what we post when it comes to images of bodies, because there is no running body. And so when we are constantly seeing runners who only exist in one body, the thin body, that is really harmful to our community. We have to ask ourselves, is this helpful or harmful to someone looking to me for quote unquote running inspiration?
Yeah. And I think
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think to that point of, is this helpful or harmful? I find that, and this is just me, this is my preference, y'all, take it or leave it. I feel like with professional Instagram accounts, like people that are out there, the two types of imagery when it comes to bodies that I want to see the coach's body, because I want to see that, like, them running, not because I want to compare the body, but to me, it's so powerful. I'm like, I want to see what the coach looks like, because I think there's also this maybe idea that coaches are supposed to be really fit and have a typical runner's body. And I just love the variety of bodies. So I feel like I like seeing the coach's body and when they share success stories from their own clients, because I'm like, wait, these are actual people. Like, these are actual people that you're showcasing, not some stock image. Please don't do stock images that you find online from like a track where everyone looks great. It's like, if I see the coach's body, then I'm like, yes, this is reality. Like, this is a real person behind this account. This is them running. This is them doing what they're telling us to do, right? Like, if I'm telling you to run a speed workout, like, I'm going to do that too. So I find, for me, when it comes to those images, like when we're sharing images, I'm like, no, I want to see you as the runner, like as the coach. And even like you've done it too. Again, I do it too, where it's like your post run in your sports bra. And it's like, yes, that's her. That's her as the runner. Like, I want to see you as the runner, and, or you celebrating the people on your team that are runners, because especially now where I find that more quote unquote everyday people are running, that just invites more variety in terms of what we see. So I find that that's my 2 cents with like thinking of like some of the coaching accounts that I really enjoy are the ones that are like, it's them running, their race photos is what they're sharing along with whatever tip that they're giving, because then it is a body in real time and not so much the body that's been curated. And again, I'm very guilty of this. I have professional running photos because I love taking professional photos, because I think every single woman should have a professional athletic photo shoot so that you can see yourself and how strong and powerful your body is. But again, I'm a fan of I think I do like a photo shoot a year of myself, because I just like to celebrate where my body is at the moment. And sometimes me looking at my body does not give me the same feedback as seeing it through a photographer's eye. It's different. But yeah, I totally went off base with that. But I know that for me, on these business accounts, I really, really love seeing the coach as well as whatever their athlete highlight or however they want to phrase it. I love that, because then to me, it's a reminder that running is for everyone. And I wanted to say, just in case anyone needs clarification, like when you're talking about professionals, we're not talking about pro athletes, because that's like a totally different field. It is those people who have spent the time in getting the education and in learning the skills as a run coach or as a physical therapist, whatever it is, and have a different knowledge base. So, yeah.
And I think that every account can serves different purposes. For me, I don't need, and this is a great conversation because you appreciate seeing the coach's body. I don't need to. However, I follow coaches whose bodies I see and whose faces I see and whose success and setback stories I get to read. It humanizes the experience for me. And it also makes me feel aware as a coach, wow, my athlete experienced the same thing. I feel less alone now, or I even experience the same thing. I feel less alone now. So I have accounts that speak to that. And I also have accounts that are just text on page. And those are both valid in my time on social media. I want to have both.
Yeah. And I find too, thinking back, because I do follow accounts too, that all their accounts are just graphics. Like if you go to the Instagram static page, it's just infographics. But again, if you follow their stories, you get so much of their face and so much of their personality that from the infographic on the static page, you don't get. So again, it's like that encouragement of check out people on both, check out their stories, check out if they've got a podcast, check out their podcast, check out the pages, check all of it out. I even, when I go down my investigator rabbit hole, I will even check the posts that they've been tagged in to see like, oh, who's part of their community? Are there, if it's a coach, it's like, oh, are there athletes tagging them? Don't do that. That's only me. I do that when I go down the rabbit hole of of researching someone and trying to like understand who they are. I do that. But I find that sometimes you can get more of a taste for their personality through stories than you do through the posts. But I love that because the point is there is space for everything, and find what speaks to you. Like I said, for me, I like seeing the bodies because I'm like, yes, this is, and especially as a woman, I love seeing different bodies. I love seeing older women embracing their bodies and like showing up as they are, just like I like seeing younger women. But for me at this point in my life, I'm like, show me the older women, because that's what I'm aspiring to. And what I hope to have as much joy in. For me, my running journey is very much all about like, how can I have the most joy? So I'm going to follow those accounts that show me what joy looks like at 40, what joy looks like at 45, what joy looks like at 50, right? Like I want to see all of that. So I think for those of you who are listening to this and we're like, yes, I'm a run coach and I'm going to get some solid tips. Solid tips is do what feels good for you, but stay within your scope. And it's so, I get baffled by how easily people practice outside of their scope. I'm like, wow, that is, I don't know if that's confidence. I really don't know what that is, but I'll see some accounts or I'll see some posts and I'm like, no, that's not your area of expertise. Like, no. And I think that's a whole different discussion of, certain people see that they have an X amount of followers and then they think they can speak to that and whatever their ego is, get some kind of satisfaction from it. But that's a different conversation. All right, I'm going to finish up with a final question. I've asked this question of you before, so we're just revisiting it. Maybe something's changed. But after everything we've talked about today, how would you say we can make running more accessible and inclusive?
Making running more, yes, we have spoken about this before. I think we hit on a bunch of points. It's one, showcasing runners in all bodies, and eliminating this idea that running can only occur if you exist in a certain body at a certain weight, in a certain race, in a certain ethnicity, right? Running is for everyone who wants to run. So that's one way. And another way that I've spoken about previously, but I think it's worth mentioning again, is normalizing the fact that not everyone is running these incredibly fast paces, and welcoming runners to run at the pace that meets them where their fitness journey is at, by moving up wave times in races, by creating even run clubs that are accessible to runners who are in the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-minute mile pace, right? And having more environments open for them to feel successful and to feel joy in their sport. So those are a couple of ways. And I know we spoke about before also just this financially making running a more accessible sport through normalizing the fact that not everyone needs to run a race, spend thousands of dollars on flights and hotels every year to have a meaningful running experience, right? That's a bigger fight to fighting with, races and the fees associated with them. That's not my fight, but just making our voices heard for those of us who don't only find fulfillment in races, saying, hey, yeah, I just kind of enjoy getting outside and appreciating what my body is capable of. And that basically comes at $3.99. It comes with the time that I have available, and and finding gratitude in that.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much as someone who I enjoy races and I enjoy my shoes, but I still get shocked by how much all of it costs. And also even just, I feel like what you're speaking to is a lot of the gatekeeping that happens within running. And again, as someone who I've made it my goal to get the 6 marathon majors, like get my 6 stars. Awesome. And even as I look toward that is Boston, right? Like, here you go, Boston. And I'm not going to get in because of a time qualifier. I know I'm not. That's just not it. And yet I feel like every year the rumblings of the people who qualified for the race thinking that spots should not be given to people who don't have time qualifiers, right? So it's that gatekeeping of, if we all, like, this running should be for everyone one way or another. And hey, as someone who has done fundraising for races, fundraising is incredibly hard. Fundraising is such a challenge. It's a job on top of the training, on top of everything else you have going on in your life. So for that, even for me, like, that's the accessibility piece and that inclusivity piece. That's part of it for me of, wait, how do I show up to this particular race when that's not how I got there? That, again, it doesn't make me less of a runner. I'm still a great runner. I'm still putting in all the work that everyone else is doing. I'm still doing those same long runs that everyone else is doing. And yet I know that what I'm thinking, that's not unique to me, because it does come up, like the rumblings do come up. And I think I share that just so that people can understand, like, there's layers upon layers upon layers in terms of having races be financially accessible, having your gear be financially accessible, not feeling like you have to do a race. Because I feel like that was part of it for me. When I first started running, I ran a few half marathons And the questions then became, so when are you doing a marathon? When are you doing a marathon? And it's like, if us as runners can just be like, you had a good run? Awesome. End of conversation. End of conversation. You're going to do that race? Great. I hope you have a great time. End of conversation. We shouldn't be pushing the next on anybody. And yet I feel
That's a
like
projection.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I've had, and it's happened to me twice now, once in London and once here in my wonderful city of Miami, where I've told people I did London and somehow it comes up, or even just when I was in London, I said, oh, I did London, like where, well, I was there on the bus, train, whatever it is. And I've gotten this question twice of, so how far away are you from a Boston qualifying time? And I'm like, what the heck? I didn't even know people asked people that. Like, I'm like, what does that have to do with anything?
Right.
And it's similarly, once people there, again, in London, when someone found out how many marathons I've done, his question was, well, what's been your progression with the race? And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what are we talking about here? Again, it's like little questions like that for me, it's the gatekeeping of, why can't I just do this because I like it? Why do we have to put something else to it that you don't even know if it aligns with who I am as a runner, or if it makes sense for me as a runner? Again, that's a bigger conversation there to have at some point, but I hear what you're saying, because there is so much gatekeeping when it comes to running, that it's not always as accessible, and it doesn't always feel as inclusive as we would like it to.
Yes. And if somebody asks you, about your Boston qualifying time, that question is about them. And with as much confidence as we can in the ways that you responded, I'm sure, and the ways that I do, I'm very clear on, I actually don't know that I want to run Boston. Yeah, no, I don't really have a desire to run it. Maybe that will change for me, but right now it's not important to me. And just saying, letting that person, that's it. The conversation is over now, because now that person is reflecting on why they asked, and maybe they'll share with you, well, I asked because this has been my biggest dream. Oh, okay. I hear that. It's not mine. Right. And so that is the biggest takeaway, is your goals are your goals, and their goals are their goals. And as soon as your goals become about somebody else's goals, game over.
Yeah. Oh, I told in both of those questions, I was like, I'm not going to get there because of time. Like, that's not how I plan on getting there. It's totally fine. Like, there are other means. And once I decided I wanted to go after that goal, it was the same thing years ago when my coach asked me that question of, is it for you or is it for them? In that moment, I realized, oh, if I really wanted this goal, there's other ways to get there. Like, if my goal is to cross that finish line, there are other ways to do it. I don't have to get a qualifying time. I can do it my way. I can run for charity. Now they have this whole 6-star finisher special spots for that. So it's like, if I really want it, there's other ways to go about doing it that are probably in more alignment with my mental state, my physical state, and how I want to show up. So I love that. And I think that's also a really great reminder for anything on social media, is that whatever the person is sharing, it's about them. It's not about you. And unless they're saying, hey, Amanda Katz, this post is for you, don't assume it's about you, and don't assume that you can apply what they are selling and have the same results, because it's not. So, okay, what's coming up for you? How can we celebrate you? What's Where do we find out more about you? Are you currently taking new running clients? Are you booked? I know you've got a big event coming up soon. So what's life looking like for you?
So I will, if the tendon gods are on my side, I will be towing a fall marathon. So I'm looking forward to that. And it is one I'm looking forward to because I get to do a little road trip with my dad, who is my biggest cheerleader. So I'm looking forward to not being a part of a massive, massive race, doing something a little more local and feeling fine about it. The time that this episode airs, I may not be taking any more running clients, but nevertheless, you should absolutely ask and find me in two ways, either on Instagram at Amanda_Katz with 2 Z's. Even if you're not looking for a run coach, introduce yourself, come say hi. And on my website, amandascatz.com. So one of those 2 areas, we can chat about training services and not training services, just 2 humans getting out there on the run.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for chatting with me on a very important topic and one that I am obviously very conflicted about. So thank you all for hearing me work through all of it. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.